Welcome to the Vet Show, part of the Coach Robb Podcast Network, episode number 6. Coach Robb Beams, how we doing?
Good afternoon, buddy. We were talking a little bit about this earlier. Number 6, let's go down the timeline. I'm going to show my age because I'm much older than you. If we go back to number 6, who would be the first number 6 you can remember?
So let me share a little story here.
Okay.
When I was younger, I used to love collecting basketball and football cards. I was a trading card guy, just loved collecting them, right?
Yep.
Well, back in the day, I don't know if you remember, but they had the High Flyers Champs Motocross card.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I remember when I was younger, my grandma would buy me packs of those, and they were my favorite, right? Because they were motocross, of course.
Where'd they sell them? I don't even know.
Like Kmart.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, you can get them right at the Kmart. And so those were my most favorite trading cards. Well, over the last couple months, I've been on TikTok. I like TikTok, Coach. I don't know. It's probably a waste of time, but
it's your entertainment. That's okay.
I've been getting fascinated with these guys opening up these trading cards, on TikTok and all different kinds, but mostly basketball, football, and I don't, me, I don't like stick and ball sports, but
yep,
I found it intriguing. Well, in my brain, I'm like, man, I remember those old motocross cards. So I went on to eBay and I've been buying up all these 91 and 92 High Flyers motocross trading cards.
Nice.
And so I've been opening up in the evening just for something to do because I find this weird enjoyment. But number 6, I think in 1991 was Jeff Emig on the Yamaha. And so
white Yamaha, blue,
white Yamaha,
white and red. Okay.
Yep. And so that would be probably the oldest number 6 for me would probably be Emig.
See, I was thinking about that when we go back before, would Ron Lechien have a 6 at that time? Would a Bailey have a 6 at that time? Would a Wardy have a 6 at that time? We know they've all had number 1, right? I remember Wardy being number 2 for a long time, but I don't know. All right, so here's a way that I'd love to engage with our community, Toolman. Anybody who's watching this on YouTube, put it in the comments below. Who do you remember? And let's see how far back we can go, because I've been you more so yourself than myself. Being at the races, people coming up saying, hey, remember when you and Dan were talking about who was number 5 and Dan brought up, Ricky Johnson and you brought up Guy Cooper and all this other stuff. I want to see how far back do our listeners go to with a number 6? Because I'm going to go back gosh, if I was going to think Europe, Malahar, am I saying that name right? Malhrbe, the big Honda boys, Brad Lackey. I'm trying to think who's going to tear us up on, how did we forget that Roger DeCoster was number 5 or number 6 or number 7, right? And then you're going to see it and hear and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot number 6 was DeCoster back in 77 at Trans Am.
Yeah.
Let's see what our devout crowd here in this community.
And then, of course,
is number 6.
I'm from NorCal, right?
Okay.
So Sacramento area.
Yep.
Steve Lamson, he's a NorCal boy. He was number 6 in the Honda.
Forever.
That one sticks out in my mind for sure.
You know what's interesting when you think about Lamson? You can only think of 2 numbers, number 6 or number 1. That's a pretty good, when you think about that. It's you've made an indelible mark. All I can ever imagine is Lamson on that CR125, number 1 plate, It's kind of like Dogger when you think about, for me at least, I always remember Dogger more in that Honda Kawasaki generation with the matching JT gear, and whether it was running the beak like Wardy used to always run on the Oakleys. Or remember when the Oakley came out, it had that little bit of a flare. So it still had the mouthpiece, but it had a little bit of a flare on the side.
Yep.
Those types of things. I am surprised that, people will tear me up for saying this, but open face helmets, I'm surprised not more of them are running them. Even though I know the bikes are faster, ground's harder, tracks are more difficult and all that, but the fact that everything that goes around comes around, I'm surprised JT hasn't taken back off. It's just goes to show you that the new generation looks at that and goes, JT, what is that?
Yeah.
They see it as almost like a generic, where those of us over 40 are like, JT, I remember when I would sell my lawnmower, I would mow yards till I was blue in the face to get that matching JT. And 2-page spread in the magazine. They had everything from Scott Burnsworth all the way to Ken Howerton and everyone in between, from Glover and Bailey. And gosh, I don't think there's one of the top guys didn't ride for JT at one time. I remember when the ad was all the Cowi guys were together, the Honda guys were together, the Suzuki. They were all kind of partitioned off into quarters. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. Yep. That was iconic gear back in the day.
Oh, I had Fox, and I remember kind of walk around with my head drip because I felt like I had, I was the poor kid on the year-old motorcycle with running Fox gear. Even though I got a brand new for Christmas, it wasn't JT. And I was thankful I had new gear, but I always felt like I didn't have the best,
Yeah.
If we have a listener that was involved back in the day of gear, can somebody put together, and again, leave it in the comment below, what kind of money do you think JT had budgeted? I know it's in relative terms, right? Gas was probably 33 cents back in these in 80, 85 to maybe the 90. When you see Barnett and Howerton from Suzuki in JT gear, when you see Johnny O'Mara and you see Bailey on Honda, when you saw who would have been the Cowi guys at that point in time, I'm thinking like a Goat Breaker, but that would have maybe been a little bit later.
Yeah.
Or he would have been earlier, but who would have been the top Cowi guys? Let's say Wardy, even though most of us remember him being Cineselo. But you think about Glover on Yamaha with, let's say, Scott Burnsworth in yellow. So you've got those two. You have Barnett and Howerton on Suzuki. If you just took two of each one of those guys, of course, they had like 10 or 15 up there. What would you guess this base salary was for gear back then for jersey, pants, and boots and gloves?
And
well, back then, JT, did they have the helmet, or was that more in the later 90s? Remember when they had that? Well, no, Glover, remember Glover ran the pink open face with the pink gear on the white Yamaha 500 or 490. So somebody help us out, unless Dan, you're plugged in on that. Of course, you were probably not even born yet.
I don't think I was born then.
Oh, kiss my ass. But yeah, when you think about that, if somebody that's listening, subscribes, listens, let us know. What do you guess, or what do you know salaries were, or if maybe Burnsworth or Lechien or Barnett listens to the show, how much were you guys making?
Yeah.
An interesting little factoid about Barnett, and maybe some of the listeners know this, hopefully many don't, so we can share some nuggets with you. Barnett was the first guy to get $1 million deal.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
First guy in history to get $1 million deal. And what's cool about Barnett is he got the $1 million deal with Suzuki, but he wanted $100,000 spread out over 10 years.
Interesting. That's actually smart.
Brilliant.
Tax-wise, smart.
Well, tax-wise, and think about it. You're 19, you're dumb with money. You're not, if you've only got 100, right, you're not going to go drop $60,000 on a lifted truck and put some kicker speakers in it. And right, if all you've got is 100 and you learn to live on that, I thought that was brilliant. And then your career's over and you still have 6 more years of $100,000 coming in on top of your day job. But yeah, he was the first guy to ink $1 million deal and spread it out over 10 years. Now,
I got one.
That's 81, 82.
That's a lot of money back then.
That's a shit ton of money. Yeah.
Hey, before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's show, which I think the listeners are going to love this, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Deegan just won the outdoor title.
Okay.
And he bought a Audi R8 with his bonus money. If you were to win the outdoor title and you got a bonus, what car would you buy?
Is it for sure I'm going to spend the money? Because I can tell you straight.
Yeah, you're spending the money. You're committed.
It's funny. I'd get the Audi R8 as well.
Really?
For that kind of money? Yeah. I mean, I can't afford a McLaren, right? I mean, if I was going to go all in, drop $3 million on a McLaren, I mean, that's my ultimate dream car. I just look at that and I just drool. But that price point of that Audi R8, it's pretty hard to argue with what you're getting for your money.
Yeah, it is. It's a cool car.
And it's, for just another little factoid, that was the car that Dungey bought.
Oh, really?
Yep. And he felt so bad that he spent that much money. He actually sold it back to the dealership. He couldn't sleep with the idea that he had invested that much money in the car. He went back to driving. When I started working with him, he was still driving the Toyota truck that he got for Rider of the Year from Toyota.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good. Yep. So yeah, it just shows you how frugal Dungey is. And for Deegan, I mean, I don't know, what's the price point in an R8? I've never looked at them. A couple hundred, maybe?
They're probably between 150 and 200, I would guess.
And think about it. Deegan, $500,000 bonus, 50% tax bracket, 250 take home, maybe 200 after. Who's his agent? Does he have an agent, or does Brian do all that?
I think Brian does it, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that it's kind of done in-house.
I think it's fair to make an assumption because Brian's negotiated tons of contracts.
He's a genius.
So let's say that Brian is the agent. So no agent percentage going off the top, 50% tax bracket, that 250 goes down, writes a check, and still has $50K in the bank. Not bad.
No, Yeah, you got to treat yourself once in a while. You know what I mean?
Well, it's the whole idea, like with Jet getting the Bentley, people are like, oh, that's ridiculous. Well, I can promise you the people behind him, if he couldn't afford it, as the old saying goes, he can afford to have that thing get demolished as soon as it comes off the lot and it's no skin off his back.
Yep.
People that are around him, if that was a dumb, there will be people that say it's a dumb purchase regardless. I understand that. I personally would agree because I'm not a car aficionado. But people would laugh if they saw how much money I spent on tri-bikes, right? They would go, that's completely ridiculous waste of money. That's my currency. If you're a car aficionado, I get it. It's not my cup of tea. I respect it, but I would never spend the money. That's why I'd never judge on it. If you looked at we've got 11 bikes in this house. I've got some, we have a downhill mountain bike team that we work with. We've got Yeti SB66s. I live in Florida. It's a ridiculous bike to own. But it was such a good deal to have. And, you got
to have one.
I had to have one. I had two of them. I got a blue and a yellow one. I've got time trial bikes and all. At any rate, I won't bore the listeners, but I don't think what Jet did buying a Bentley was out of, I think it's cool. It shows what potential, and I'm going to get to Lucas Myrtle a little bit. That's why I think everybody should have an agent, because I'd rather get, I don't know what their percentage is. Let's just say 20% for even numbers, right? I'd rather get 80% of something than 100% of nothing. So if Jet can go out and buy a Bentley and it's not going to break his bank and he can afford to lose it, what a great encouragement for somebody who's in the super mini class that thinks, hey, maybe if I do this the right way, I could have the same success that Deegan's had financially, that Jet's had financially. Well, that requires a team effort. You've got to have good parents. You've got to have good agents. I mean, think about what Lucas Myrtle has done in regards to bringing in new money for that team. Like, based on when you guys are watching this, Progressive just signed on as the title sponsor of HRC. When was the last time you saw a title sponsor? Let's test the listeners. What was the last title sponsor Honda had? There's two that come to mind.
It's been a long time.
See if you can hit them. See if you can hit one of them. Can you think of either one of them? There's two in particular that were... Go back to Trey Kennard days. What was it?
Was Muscle Milk?
Yep. And then before that, when Ricky was riding, who was it?
Oh, gosh. Hey, I don't want to say it's the Woody Woodpecker, but...
Woody Woodpecker. That's exactly it.
Was it really?
Yep, exactly. It's Universal Studios. So isn't it funny, even though it was vaguely in your mind, you could picture it. Woody Woodpecker at Universal Studios was the title sponsor. Then Muscle Milk came in. And a lot of people don't realize that when James was being courted by Honda, he couldn't go to Honda because he was a Red Bull. And they currently had Muscle Milk, and Muscle Milk had a 2-year deal. So the way the musical chairs felt, they couldn't bring on James with Red Bull to Honda because Muscle Milk had a 2-year deal. So therefore, James never went to Honda.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. So you think about that, to bring Progressive in, that's significant, because if you look at that, it is a very crisp, it's not brandalized at all, right? You just see HRC, you see Yoshimura, you see Dunlop, you see the riders, they've got their Red Bull, they've got their Alpine Stars and Quad Lock. I can't remember because it's new and I apologize. Beautiful watch that Jet's sponsored by now.
Oh, yeah.
With that.
Can't remember. I know the necklace, the Jackson necklace or whatever, but yep.
We're talking about it. Eventually it'll be second nature. Like, I'd never heard of Quad Lock until Jet had it. Now we're sitting here talking about it as common as, Xerox it. So, I've realized with our show, man, as we get started, we have a tendency to go on the nostalgia route based on a race number behind us. And maybe that will hopefully I'll tell you what, this will be another thing. Let's survey the listeners. If you're watching us on YouTube, please engage with us. Do you mind if we spend 10 minutes talking about nostalgia based on our race number that's our episode behind us? Because if you don't mind, we'll add it to it and maybe even do a little bit of due diligence. I will confess, in the last couple of shows, Dan and I have done zero research. This is us going, hey, who do you remember being number 5? Hey, do you remember being number 6? So
I like it. I think it's cool.
Well, I hope the listeners do, because I'm still a big fanboy, as I say, every show. And I think because we have a lot of riders that are our age, they can relate to the JT gear and the Wardy running the Beak and the open face helmets, and, O'Mara running the Gators and all the different stages that we've all seen,
Yeah.
So,
well, I got one thing, Coach, before we do get into the meat and potatoes. The listeners are probably like, man, when are they going to, but I got one more important thing. And this does apply to all of you vet riders out there. 2025, the elite team applications are open. And Coach, maybe you could share a little bit more information about this, but there's 20 spots open for motocross riders, 20 spots open for off-road riders, whether you're a 50 rider or 65 years old, vet guy. The applications are open to everybody. So briefly, if you want to touch on that and add to that, I just want to make sure that that's out there.
No, I appreciate that. What we've done is we have an elite team. This will be our 15th year. And over the last couple of years, we've been very blessed. Last year, we had 3,300 resumes for 20 spots. This year, we are expanding it. We're going to do both an off-road team and a motocross team. And like you said, Dan, it's open for anybody, regardless of class and regardless of bike size. So here we are in the vet show. I'm not saying that we're going to pick 7 125 riders and 3 85 riders. No. We're going to take a look at all the resumes. I don't care. We're not looking to create a dream team. That's not what we're doing. We've been very fortunate. We've got tremendous amount of sponsorship and a tremendous amount of partners, and our partners are working with us. If you're selected on the team, you'll get our elite level coaching program at a significantly discounted price, $450 savings to be specific. We've got partnership deals with Dunlop and T-Dub and 6D and Flying Colors and HP Motor Development and Suspension. It's like 25, 30 partners. My goal for having this team is to maybe save you some money when you guys go racing. So if you go to CompleteRacingSolutions.com, if you go on the top there, you'll see Amateur Development Program. It's just a very simple form. Fill that out. Let us know why you think you should be on the team. And if you happen to have a partner or you happen to have a child that rides and you think that they'd be a good brand, they'd be good for the brand, please have at it. We've got a great relationship with T-Dub out of Australia. They do all of our sublimated CRS gear. If you go to the page, you'll see the sublimated gear. We have merchandise. We have literally beanies, baseball caps. Dan, you've got one on right now. T-shirts, hoodies, socks, water bottles, jerseys, pants, seat covers, gloves. And it's all available to you guys, and it's at a very significant discount. I want you guys to save money and go racing. So not a sales pitch on it, but Dan, I apologize. I didn't even think about mentioning it. So thank you for doing that. Get your resumes in. It wouldn't hurt, wink, wink, if you mentioned that you support the show. That would be cool to know that you guys are listening, because I'm always interested how people hear about what we're doing. So let us know.
I know vet guys love tools too. And I hear you got a really good tool vendor part of the program this year as well.
Well, and I didn't want people to think I was going to blow smoke up your skirt, but no, in all seriousness, guys, Dan has been very generous. The complete toolkit set, he's giving us a price that I just can't thank you enough, Dan. One of the things that we hear from a lot of our riders is, I never have a complete set of tools. I kind of forgot I needed this until I need it. And if you follow Dan on social media, you see those little convenience things like the funnel that holds itself in place, or something that, like the new one with, keeping the bike from getting stolen and having just little things that makes your life easier, keep these people from ruining your day at the track. But yeah, we're actually going to have CRS graphic toolboxes for you guys that have all the tools on the inside. And thanks to Dan's generosity, you guys are going to get them at a price that you won't find anywhere else. It's not a sales pitch. Turn it around. We want to save you guys money. Let's go racing. Let's have fun, and let's look good. So thank you for bringing that up, Dan. I apologize. Yep. I forgot about it.
Nope. All good. All right, let's get into it. Coach, you sent me a list. The topic for today's show was going to be 5 unbelievable tips to stay competitive in motocross over the age of 30.
Yes.
There's 5 tips. We're going to kind of break this up into several different shows. But Coach, I don't know about you, but I get a lot of feedback from our vet riders still. It's the most popular topic still to this day, and that's nutrition and hydration. And I wanted to touch more about that because it's okay. We've talked about this before, and I know some of the listeners are probably like, yeah, man, they've covered this before. Yes, we have. It may be a little bit of a reminder, but there's some, there may be some new nuggets in here for you to take home with you as well. So, because let's face it, guys, nutrition for us, and I'm going to speak for myself. I'm a 40-year-old male with a job, a side business, a family. I try to ride. I got a lot of things going on. So to find a way to eat healthy and make sure that I'm eating enough is a challenge. And so I think that's where we kind of want to fill the gaps, Coach. It's a challenge. It's a challenge for me. I'm going to speak for a lot of my buddies, a lot of the feedback that I get from our listeners. It's one of the biggest challenges. It truly is. It's something so simple. I just have a salad for lunch, or, eat healthy. But yeah, that's all great. It sounds good.
Yeah.
Executing it is tough.
I like the word that you used there, where there's a lot of there's some open spaces in there. Yes, we've talked about nutrition, but if you are on this side of the emails and you hear the questions that are coming in, and we'll talk a little bit about it because we've consolidated a lot of them that have come in. I like the word that you said was a reminder, because for some people, they may hear us say, yep, you need to focus on fruits, vegetables, lean protein, eat every couple hours, magical numbers, 300 calories an hour, leave 2 hours to digest, walk out of the room, you know everything. Sounds good until the real world kicks in. And well, what if I miss my meal? What should I eat? How much should I eat? Can I make it up? How do I catch up? Should I eat? How do I not get the GI distress? Right? These are the bombardment of emails that we get. So I do agree with you. Yeah. I sent you over 5 of them. If we want to spend the next 30 minutes talking about nutrition, let's do it. And let's reiterate for the third time. If you've heard it before, let it be a reminder. If you could pause the show right now, could you continue the rest of the conversation if your buddy came up and said, hey, what should I eat? Can you answer that question? If they were to ask how much they should be eating, can you answer that question? What about nutritional timing? Can you answer that question? And here's something, and I don't mind confiding it here with our listeners. What I think is interesting is I get phone calls probably 4 or 5 times a week from existing pros, both here and on the MXGP side of things, who you would think, being at a professional level, they would be able to tell you what to eat, how much. They would be able to tell you about nutritional timing. And guess what? They're just as confused as you guys are. So please don't feel like, well, I'm just an old vet rider. Please stop. Change your perspective. We've got pro national level guys you guys are going to be watching this weekend racing that had the exact same questions and the exact same confusion. So
let me interject real quick, Coach.
Yeah, you go right ahead, but always.
You're right. It's just because we're vet riders, right? And we want to perform better on the motorcycle as well. And that's the key, right? But really for us also, it's a lifestyle, right?
Yes.
We're getting up there in age, and, our health typically declines as you age, or you get these ailments or diseases, or you're more apt to, so eating healthy and it's really a lifestyle thing also. And I wanted to, because I hear this a lot at the track, Coach. It's like, I'm 50 years old. I just ride for fun. I'm going to go into McDonald's for lunch after this, and I'm going to pound a 64-ounce Coke from the 7-Eleven. And, they think that it doesn't apply to them because they're not a racer or an elite athlete. I'm just a vet weekend warrior. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight that this applies to everybody, and for different reasons.
Well, what's the thing that you normally hear, Dan? I kind of squandered my 20s and my 30s, bad habits, bad, decisions. And this is one of the reasons why we have our Navigating Amateur Motocross with Derek Harris, because if I can get in front of a parent who has a young rider, and the parent can understand, okay, I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm 30, I'm 35, I'm 40. Here's my list of mistakes. I smoked, I dipped, I drank, I did this, I did that, right? Okay. Well, unfortunately for you, you can't turn back time. What your young athlete has is the benefit of compound knowledge over time. It's a whole genesis behind Navigating Amateur Motocross. My hope is that somebody who's a vet rider who's listening to us realizes that your current behavior is going to influence that next generation. Now, if you don't have children, I get it, but you still have nephews, cousins, somewhere in your family, you've got children around you. Even when you go to the track, as a vet rider, you guys are hauling the mail, and these young kids look up to you. There's no doubt about it. But the thing that I always say to the young athletes, and it applies to the vets as well, how many times have we as human beings have forgotten about the idea that I would much rather struggle today to get a workout done to have the long-term health benefits than have no struggles right now and then have to deal with the ramifications later. And that's where the paradigm shift has to kick in, because we think, oh, like myself, I'm 55 years old, right? What do I have to gain at this point? Another 25 to 30 years, hopefully. So the sooner you start, the sooner you benefit. Again, I don't want to sound like this is just a preaching sermon, but it's never too late to start, not only for yourself, but for the next generation that sees you at the track, whether they're relatives or they're not. And then you step back and you think, okay, we've talked a little bit, and we're going to get more into this in the future shows about adrenal fatigue. Because the question that I get is, man, I have really struggled to go to bed. I'm exhausted and I can't fall asleep. I've got night sweats. I'm craving simple sugars, right? Pretty much you've got 3 of the big 4. The 4th one would be low sex drive. So you may have one or all or some combination of that. You go, okay, great. I'm labeled. I've got adrenal fatigue. How quickly can we turn those symptoms around? I always say, and we've used this analogy numerous times on the show, if you back a dump truck up to a volcano and you start dumping dirt in it, I don't know how many truckloads it's going to take to fill it, but you got to start dumping it in there if you want to fill it. So I've had some athletes, it's like, look, all we did was add raw nuts, raw coconut, some extra virgin olive oil, and we did some omega-3 supplementation. All their symptoms went away. So if you can imagine how deep the hole was, it wasn't very deep. It took very little and their symptoms turned around. You have some guys, I've got one gentleman that I'm working with, phenomenal dude, owns his own auto body shop. We've been working together for 1.5 years, and we are just now, after pulling back all of his intensity, reducing volume, and I'll be very, very specific. We've gotten to a point where his fatigue levels were so high, he races quads, and we would only race every other week, and we would do 0 training in between. That way he could bank enough energy to go race on the weekend. And he did nothing for 2 weeks to try to rebuild his body battery, to get his HRV balanced, to get his resting heart rate down, to get his stress levels down. And just recently are we noticing that the average stress has started to come. 18 months he's been doing this. I don't know about you, Dan, but I know a lot of our listeners, 18 months feels like an eternity. So it goes back to that. If you make some sacrifices now, let's rephrase sacrifice with investment, little investments, then you get to reap the long-term benefits versus doesn't really matter. Because like you said, Dan, it doesn't really matter. That attitude, it doesn't really matter, just makes the future that much worse.
Yeah, it does. Makes procrastinating a lot easier.
It does. And this is where I like to get into the psychological side of success, because if I challenge you and I say, Dan, I want you to get from here to the end of the block, and you go and you run it takes you 40 seconds. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you $100 if you can be 5 seconds faster. Put on different shoes, may change clothes. You might even work on your running form to be 5 seconds fast. Why? Because there's an incentive. So for some of you, it might be stepping on the scale and being absolutely disgusted by the number. It might be looking at what your actual pant size is. I understand. You've got to find what resonates with you. Now, I'm not into using exercise as punishment for bad behaviors we talked about that punishment, guilt that we want to break. You feel guilty for eating something, so you punish yourself with exercise. It's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about, for some of us, we're so distracted. We have so many things going on. We become unmotivated because we're tired. We have low blood sugar. Or, Dan, you and I have talked about this off the record. You have so many things on your plate. You don't even have the mental energy or the space to even think about it. Like, it literally does not cross your mind until you go get loaded up and you get to the track and you're like, man, I haven't eaten very well all day long, or maybe all week long. Man, I'm really behind on my hydration. You go and you look at your body weight, you notice it's been trending downward, not realizing you're just like, man, I got to get to bed. I got to get up tomorrow. I'm only going to get 6 hours of sleep as it is. We literally forget about hydration and food, because if I were to have you write down everything your brain's balancing, you're freaking in overload mode. Yeah. You have a young daughter. You have a beautiful wife. You've got your side job. You've got your main job, right? You've got 3-4 radio shows that you're a part of. There's a lot. It's easy to forget. And that's what I think needs to be. I know we're deep into our conversation today, but maybe when we look at nutrition, if you go back and you listen to our previous shows about what does food consist of, perimeter of his store, what's your ideal number, 300 calories an hour when you're active, make sure you bridge your calorie gap on a daily basis, evaluate your sensitivities to the food, evaluate your quality of sleep. If you're new to the show, the good news is we've only got 5 ahead of us. So you've only got to go back and listen to 5 shows and jump into nutrition. And Dan, I hope it's okay. Stop me if you don't think we should. But when we get to the beginning of the year, we're going to roll out for you guys literally a 3-year plan on what we're going to be talking about. We'll take some side trails here and there, but we've been listening to you guys. You guys have done a great job giving us feedback. We've got a really good idea of what you're looking for. So we're going to be taking nutrition to all new levels. We're going to take hydration, strength, flexibility, sports psychology, how to deal with doubt, depression, and everything else. But we're going to make those a lot more in-depth, but they're going to be very systematic. I guess we could say getting fitter and faster in 12 months, right? We'll do that for a three-year period or whatever. But we obviously have a lot of races that we want to talk to you guys about. If we get to the beginning of the year, you've got Daytona, Freestone, Spring-a-Ding in that month of March. We jump into areas and regionals and Mammoth. Then you start jumping into, say, Loretta's. Then you've got AZ Open, Cal Classic. You've got Ponca in there. You've got, Loretta's, all these big races. So as the months get cut up, we're going to be talking about all those and things that you guys can do to be prepared for them. But at the underlying tone is you guys have to be knowledgeable, especially when it comes to eliminating frustrations.
Which one of the questions I had was, your calorie burn rate, right? Suppose you are eating enough food, right? And I do want to talk about the prioritizing some of the complex carbohydrates and the lean proteins as well. But say you're eating right, and Monday through Friday that your calorie burn rate based on your activities is, I'm going to throw a number out there, 6,000 calories, right? But every Saturday, you stay at home with the family, and that's movie day, hypothetically stay, right?
Sure.
Where you're not moving a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
During the week, you're eating 6,000 calories, or you're trying to match what your burn rate is, right? So you don't have that gap. But Saturday, you can't just pig out, right? You can't eat that 6,000 calories not having any activity. So you do need to adjust, correct?
You're 100% correct. And this is where, for those of you that are running the Garmins that we recommend, and again, I don't get paid by Garmin. I don't get anything for free. I'm not a brand ambassador. I buy all of them. I say it every time we talk about Garmin. Garmin's great because if you go into your Garmin dashboard, particularly on the computer, you can go in and it will partition off what they refer to as resting calories versus active calories. So what's beautiful about it is, for those of you that have your computer, go over on the left-hand side of the screen, go down to reports, or right now they've changed it a little bit. You can go to calories in and out report. When you go to calories in and out, in the top right-hand corner, click on 4 weeks. If you go through reports, go reports, health and fitness, calories, and then change the display. I know I said that quickly, but if you're listening to this, just rewind it and pause it. When you look at that 4 week, move your mouse from day, I always say start from the right because that was yesterday. Start on the right side of the screen and move your mouse day by day by day and keep it in the blue. And what you'll notice is in the pop-up box, it'll say your resting is 32, 3,200, 3,223, 3,212. Well, you see the theme here is around 3,200 calories. To your point, Dan, because it's a fantastic question, but let's make sure that the listeners really take away. When you look at what Garmin refers to as your resting calories, I'm going to get a little sophisticated, but it's not hard. We refer that as your basal metabolic needs. Fancy way of saying how many calories do you need to sustain life without going into a deprivation mode, which drives your stress level up. Because the $1 million question, how many calories should I eat? And you've heard me say this publicly. It all depends on your body size, your bone density, your muscle mass, and your body fat percentages. So you could look at somebody that's approximately the same size as you, and when you look at their Garmin, you'll see a significantly different calorie burn. There's another variable you have to factor in is I live in Florida. It's hot, it's humid. If you happen to be in an area this time of the year where it's 20 or 30 degrees cooler, you're going to have less of a calorie burn rate, ironically, until it gets extremely cold, and then the calorie burn rate goes actually higher again because your body's burning more calories trying to heat itself up. So what I love about your question is 20 years ago, we used to use generic formulas. Take your body weight, add a 0. It gave you a ballpark. We said if you were physically active, you could multiply that number. So let's say you weighed 180 pounds, you added a 0. So you need 1,800 calories to essentially stay alive. Well, if you were doing, let's say, 2 hours of exercise, multiply that number by 30%, add that to it. So now you need to take in 2,500 calories. If you're somebody that was like a triathlete that was doing maybe 3 to 5 hour bike rides on Saturday, take your 1,800 calories and double it. Again, no exact science back in the day. Now the watches are giving you I would never look in the eyes and tell you that they're 100% accurate, but you're probably within the 90 to 95% accuracy, right? So going to your question, if you move it on the blue and it shows you what your average daily, they refer to it as resting, that's what you should eat on your rest day when you're doing, I think you refer to it as movie day. That's how you would know how much to eat without going overboard.
Another question I have is,
okay,
and I think this is fairly common, right? We don't eat enough. Most people think that they're eating too much. In some cases, that is probably true and correct, right? But
very slim, very, and not to interrupt your thread of thought, at the time of this recording, I'm going on my 35th year as a human performance coach, and I've never had one athlete, notice I use the word athlete, not in our weight loss division, and our athlete, any athletic division, speed and agility, motorsports, endurance, never had one athlete that's eating enough. Think about that. 35 years, and we've had the privilege of working with over 20,000 people.
Yeah.
Stop and think about that. So by the way, when we say 20,000, you got to remember, we've managed marathon programs for like Fleet Feet. So there's been times that we've had 1,000 people in our marathon program. So please don't think those numbers are, I'm not trying to embellish them. We've got we've got all the spreadsheets. We've mathematically calculated it legitimately, and not one person has ever eaten enough. Think about that as a percentage.
Yeah.
Statistically speaking. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But
no, that's okay.
That number to sound embellished.
You know me, I don't eat enough typically, especially when I go ride, right?
Yep.
I load up in the mornings, I forget my breakfast burrito on the counter, and that just happens, right?
Yep.
But what are some signs that you can maybe physically see or feel after a day of riding and you haven't eaten enough?
Well, this is a good one. And I'm going to get a little interpersonal here, but I think we're all grown adults here. I think we can handle it. First thing is, pay attention if it hurts when you urinate. You've got to remember that when your body's extrapolating the nutrients from it, like when you urinate and you think about waste product that's coming through, as a percentage, if you're dehydrated, it's very hard to, I won't say very hard, but it can be painful to urinate. We had a professional triathlete who unfortunately didn't realize that he only had one kidney, and he did Ironman Hawaii. He dropped his special needs bottle, and he got behind on calories and ended up getting dehydrated. Point for bringing it up is, as he became dehydrated, the insides of his kidneys started rubbing against each other, and he started urinating blood. So think about it. It wouldn't be atypical for somebody who's dehydrated to pass a little bit of urine in their blood. Not something you want to play games with. You need to go get it checked out immediately. But when it hurts to urinate, because you got to think about it, you're urinating a concentration of waste, right? The uric acid and stuff that's in your urine. So that would be number one. The big thing to keep in mind would be the rule of 48 hours. I know you're talking about the next day, but when we get to 48 hours, that's if you've got a tremendous amount of residual soreness. And I'm not saying if you went out and rode Glen Helen and it was nasty rough, right? That they're going to be sore no matter what. But I'm saying at this point, as a vet rider, if you've been riding for more than a couple of years, you know that difference between, I'm tender to holy smokes, it's 2 days later and I'm still struggling to, stand up and squat. You're not eating enough amino acids, which comes exclusively from protein sources. So, and those would be the first two that I would look at. Yes, sir.
And lean protein sources, correct? Or any protein.
This is something that we'll get into when we really disseminate nutrition. Eating not so good fats like animal product. For those of you that are strict vegetarians, I apologize. This conversation may turn your stomach a little bit, but believe it or not, there are some studies that are out there that some of the European athletes advocate eating something that is very marbly, believe it or not. And what they talk about is the idea that marble fat actually helps with the tendons and the ligaments and their durability. Now, there's going to be somebody that will say, Rob, there's no way that could be truthful. I'm just sharing with you not what a clinical environment has said, but very, very successful coaches overseas that I'm talking like, well, I'll just call his name out, Brett Sutton. If you look him up, there's not a more successful endurance coach anywhere in the world than Brett Sutton. He's won more Ironmans and he has more Olympic medals than any endurance coach in the world. One of his athletes is Daniela Raif. She just recently retired because of some hip issues. She's the most decorated female athlete in the sport of triathlon. And he's very vocal. As you're in your heavier days of training and your training blocks, eat marbly meat. Now that's coming from Brett Sutton. Again, I have the utmost respect for him. Badass dude. He's European, takes no shit from nobody, doesn't care what anybody says or thinks. But he's the guy that's got all the results. And you know me, when someone like that talks, I'm going to listen. Especially when you know that he is not an advocate for performance enhancing drugs. He's one of the few old school coaches that thinks you can still win. Now that I don't even want to open up that can of worms. He's just he's all about sweat equity, and he does go against the grain of a lot of textbook stuff. And as you know, I tend to gravitate towards that mindset.
Yeah. Prioritizing complex carbohydrates and lean proteins for sustaining energy levels and muscle repair, things like that. Brief overview on complex carbohydrates. What are some things that guys want to concentrate on?
Well, I'm impressed that you're using the word complex carbohydrate. I really am. Because even though we talk a lot about it, this isn't your wheelhouse. This isn't something that you sit on the phone 12 hours a day talking about. The word complex carbohydrate is the most important word you can come up with, because regardless of what the textbooks and the social media experts like to say, I shouldn't call them experts, we'll call them influencers, right? The number one preferred fuel source by the brain is always sugar. No matter what somebody says about putting your body into a state of ketosis and all that, scientific research has validated that the brain's preferred fuel source will always be sugar. It's also been validated that you're more efficient at burning body fat when the presence of sugar is there. You can try to, argue that all you want, but it's just scientific fact. Now, there's always things that you can take out of context, right? If you take something situationally out of context, you can dismiss what I just said. But that's just a big game that they like to play. When we look at complex carbohydrates, I think it's so simple, and I think everybody can relate to it. Perimeter of your store. Fruits, vegetables, lean protein. Now, for those of you that are strict vegetarians, I would encourage you to really stop and think about it. Maybe you haven't. I'm only bringing this up because I had this conversation as recent as yesterday. If you're a lacto-ovo vegetarian, that means that you do dairy. You'll do eggs, maybe yogurt, and some milk. At least there's going to be some protein in there. An egg is a complete amino acid. Everything is indexed against an egg. If you're a strict vegetarian and you don't eat eggs and you do no animal products whatsoever, you've got to really question yourself on where you're getting all of your complete amino acids and where you're getting your iron from. Now, Dan, you and I could do a whole show on just the difficulties of being a vegetarian, both the pros and the cons of being a vegetarian.
I'll bring my wife on for that one.
Yeah, and for public knowledge, I am not a vegetarian, but we do have athletes who are. The big challenge that we run into is, now I'm going to go a little bit science alert here, so please take a deep breath. The reason why we want you to, I'm not advocating meat eating. Somebody's going to try to ostracize me. Do yourself a favor. Don't leave me. In fact, if you leave me a comment, I won't even respond to it. Here's why. I'm just talking about it from answering your question. What is the most bioavailable source of iron? Well, it's going to be animal products, particularly red meat. Now, here's where it goes scientific. When you eat the red meat, your body extrapolates the iron. When you absorb that into your system, iron is a precursor to hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is where you carry oxygen in the blood. Don't let that be complicated. You eat red meat, you absorb iron. When the iron levels are at a good state, it allows you to carry more oxygen in the blood. Now let's go down the path of the female. When a female has a menstrual cycle and she loses a lot of blood, they'll say that she's anemic. Why is she anemic? Because she has a low red blood cell count, low blood cells, less oxygen. What does your partner say when she is on her menstrual cycle? I'm tired. That's why now you understand when someone says they're anemic. Every single guy listening to this show can become anemic, because when you exercise, you break down the red blood cells. So the red blood cells' ability to carry oxygen gets minimized. So think about it. We're athletes breaking the red blood cells down. And then over here, you're not eating foods that are iron rich. Therefore, you carry less oxygen. So you'll have some athletes that will report themselves to me and they're like, Rob, I got to get in better shape. And they're super buff. And we do some baseline assessments. Their strength, speed, lactate tolerance, it's all there. And then we do, I don't want this to sound disrespectful. I'm trying to get the individual to understand it's not a fitness issue. We validated that. It's a nutritional issue. you're not going as fast as you're capable of on the weekend because you're anemic. How would you know if you're anemic? Well, through training, we know what your baseline numbers and your capability is. And when we don't see it manifest itself on the weekend or at the races, because we have to, when you look at a Monday through Sunday, think about it from a residual fatigue standpoint. If we just kind of, for illustration purposes, use Monday as the first day of the week. Let's say you had a real peaceful weekend, batteries are charged, you're on all 8 cylinders on Monday. Go to work, take care of your family, take care of your job, cross-train, ride. How tired are you by Friday? It's residual fatigue. When do most of our listeners get a chance to ride? On the weekend. So you're bringing an exhausted body physically and mentally into going very, very fast on a dirt bike. You see how that could become a lethal combination?
One of the things also...
Nope, go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
Also is, this has been a few years ago, maybe you sent, it was a chart for me to track my food intake and how I feel. I mean, even if somebody, one of our listeners, even if you do that, if you just track what you're eating and how you feel after you eat, it's pretty incredible to see how the food you eat affects your energy level, your mental clarity. It sounds so, what's that word, Coach?
Like an oxymoron.
Yeah, just, well, duh, yeah, but once you actually see it and feel it, it's pretty incredible. Something so basic can help.
It's interesting you said that, because just this week I talked to an MXGP rider and one of the 450 outdoor riders, right? And this subject came up because here was the question that came from one of the pros. How do you, Rob, test an athlete's sensitivities to food? Very legitimate question. When I always like to have my athletes utilize the MyFitnessPal. It's an app that's free on your phone, and it literally will interact and it will feed data directly into Garmin. So if you're looking at your calorie burn rate versus your intake, MyFitnessPal is the calorie counter. So you put it in, so you have confidence in your numbers. When you put that in, you just compare them on their calories in and out report under health stats on the dashboard. When you look at the whole idea of, I have an athlete, I've shared it here publicly, and I'll use it again just as a reminder based on your statement. I have an athlete who went to a registered dietitian who was told that he was lactose intolerant. Keyword is intolerant. Therefore, he was told to eat no dairy products because he's lactose intolerant. Well, he can eat yogurt, but he cannot drink whole milk or any milk product for that matter. Like, he can't drink a glass of milk. Doesn't matter if it's skim milk all the way up to whole milk. Both yogurt and milk have lactose in it. So because he had a sensitivity to milk, drinking a glass of milk, he got categorized as you're lactose intolerant. No, if you can eat yogurt, but you can't drink milk, you have a sensitivity to the milk, not the yogurt. That does not make you lactose intolerant. It makes
Or is it the hormones in the milk?
Well, but that's where people, and you and I are not trying to get on a soapbox, but this is what irritates me to no end. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We already discussed, even in today's conversation, what is our biggest challenge? Eating enough calories. And now I'm going to come in and start taking categories of food away from you. That's why I think the fact that you've brought this up is so powerful. If you're listening or you're watching this on YouTube, go to the description box below this video, and there's a little bit of an outline of today's show. And then you'll see there's a link to a resource page. It's very simple to follow spreadsheet, free of charge. It's just going to take you to our Complete Racing Solutions resource page. That's where you find the heart rate. That's where you find the food log and all this. And what Dan's talking about is it's a very generic Excel spreadsheet. You write down what you ate at what time, and there's a little drop-down box. You click on it, and it's asking you, what is your mental clarity and what are your energy levels like? And I'm so pumped that you brought this up, Dan, because I've had individuals, and the one that I always use, and I've used it on the show previously, is the red apple. Ironically, the same guy who can eat yogurt but can't drink milk, it's the exact same guy that has an allergic reaction to red apples. So if you go and you textbook it, you're like, yep, an apple has fiber, it has water, it has vitamins and minerals, it's a good food. And then when he eats it, his face swells up. Probably not a good food item for him to eat 20 minutes before he's going to get on the starting gate. And it goes back to what you were saying. We need to know, first and foremost, what is your calorie burn rate? Garmin's telling you. What is it you're burning to stay alive, as well as your activity? Garmin gives you It partitions them both off. Win-win. Now you've got to look at what foods are going to make up that calorie number. You used the number earlier, 6,000 calories. Don't get hung up on Dan's number of 6. Cut it in half. Go to 3. Cut that down to 2. The number's not what's important. Can you eat enough food? Because if you have a young child that races with you, he or she may only weigh 100 pounds. Well, their calorie burn rate is still going to be 1,300 to 1,400 calories. I want you to see how much food that is for a young athlete to consume 1,400 calories. Now we're an adult. Your calorie burn rate's 3,000. We have to figure out what food volume is going to match 3,000 calories, because that's what you're saying first, Dan. The second stage is, and that's where the spreadsheet comes in so handy, put in what you've eaten. Only you as an individual are keeping track of the spreadsheet, so no one's going to critique what you're eating. Go over, how's your energy levels? 15 minutes. That's the magic number. Is about 15 minutes. You'll get an insulin spike based on what you've eaten. If you have good mental clarity, it passes the test. If you can finish your workout or ride session, it passes the test. And then those items become your shopping list for the next weekend you go riding or racing. So even though it's tedious at first to go through it, you're building a shopping list and what you can eat on race day without the sensitivities. Nothing worse than practicing starts for a month and then you erroneously eat something, go to the starting gate and your reaction time is down because you ate something that you're sensitive to and didn't even know it. Wouldn't that piss you off to high heaven?
Totally. We're coming to the end of this, Coach, but I had one more thing.
Yes, sir.
God, we could go on for hours.
That's okay.
About this topic, but
we won't go back to it. I promise. Go ahead.
I got one more thing that kind of goes off of the last comments is, as we get older, right? We tend to get a lot of inflammation in our bodies. Mm-hmm. And what are some foods that we can eat to help getting so inflamed, mm-hmm. and also help repair some of those muscle tissues and help us recover a little bit quicker so we can go ride the next day and not feel like crap?
We were talking a little bit earlier about eating amino acids coming directly from protein sources. That's the only thing that will rebuild the muscle tissue, plain and simple. So that's why it's important that you have high quality protein in your system, because those amino acids, those words get a little bit interchanged. You eat protein, what rebuilds the torn down muscle tissue is specifically amino acids. So we want those to be interchangeable. That's how you're going to handle the muscle soreness. When it comes to inflammation and swelling, the first thing that we always start with is get away from anything that's processed. That's why we always say the perimeter of the store, because everything in the middle of the store is in a box, a bag, a can, or a wrapper of some sort. Therefore, it has preservatives, and we really struggle breaking down preservatives. As we've said on the show previously, if you can't pronounce it, you can't digest it, especially when you get into artificial coloring agents and things like that. So that would be the very first thing that I would start with. And if the listeners will just do that till our next show, avoid processed foods, i.e. anything in a box, a can, or a wrapper of any sort, and watch what happens to the inflammatory response. You'll eliminate 90% of it. The other side is what you said, Dan. Just keep that spreadsheet. We prefer 2 days during the week and 2 on the weekend. So it could be Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. Saturday, Sunday, or go Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Go Thursday, Friday before, Saturday, Sunday, or go Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, because you eat a little bit differently on the weekend. Yeah. And getting rid of processed foods, that'll reduce inflammation. And then looking at what you're sensitive to, because I could have 2 people, like if you go and you Google, does dairy create inflammation? You're going to see a tremendous amount of research that says absolutely creates inflammation, but I'll have an individual who does not have that reaction and someone who has that times 10, super sensitive. Do your own litmus test. So good question.
Last question before we go, Coach.
Okay.
This is going to be a yes or no or a true or false. I don't know. We'll see how it pans out, but
yeah.
A lot of people, a lot of my friends, they drink sports drinks that are high in amino acids.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a replacement for eating foods that are high in amino acids?
Not to answer the question with a question, but are they drinking the drink during physical activity or immediately afterwards?
After.
In the first 15 to 20 minutes, the liquid amino acids will be the most bioavailable and most absorbable. So yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So this
Nope. I was just gonna say, I just want to thank you for this, man. This has been another great show. I do want to apologize to anybody who didn't enjoy our nostalgia conversation for the first 25 minutes, but give us your feedback below. Do we have your permission? And we ask that politely.
And just know that Coach Rob and I love it. So just no pressure or anything, but we love it. So,
well, we want to give the people what they want. And man, the numbers continue to go up. You and I were talking about this off the air, and we look at the analytics, and you guys are awesome. The feedback that you guys, it's interesting because I haven't seen a lot of questions or comments underneath the videos, but the amount of DMs and emails that we've gotten have been quite a bit. So whatever you guys are comfortable with, Dan and I will continue to support it. We just want to say thanks for supporting the show. And we've got a lot of notes and things that we're going to be bringing to you. Dan, when we get together next, man, we're on the cusp of World Vets, California, baby. And what are you doing? You want to share with everybody what we're doing? World Vets?
No, let's keep it a secret.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what.
It's going to be different than this.
Well, we'll be
different than this.
When we do our October show, we'll share with everybody what we're doing for World Vets. How about that? Because our next show needs to be specific to World Vets.
Coach, so we can't let all the cats out of the bag here.
Okay.
We gotta hold them in a little bit of suspense.
You're going to have some hate mail on that one, but
that's okay.
Guys, thank you for supporting the show. We really appreciate it.
Make sure you thank you guys as well. Make sure you like and subscribe our video. Make sure you share with your friends and family members, and share this show to all your vet buddies. It's we get a kick out of it, and I'm sure they will too. So thank you again, and we'll see you on episode 7.
Peace.